Hey everybody, it's showtime. Welcome. How you doing? I hope you're doing all right out there. So as you can see from the title, I'm going to get into this new law that it allows for the arresting of just endless numbers of journalists. I'm going to get into that in a second. However, as you know, there's been some developments going on in Russia, and I want to talk about those for a minute because I would be remiss to not do that. However, I'll also say this: people are like, "Lee, what's happening in Russia?" I'm like, I fucking know. How am I supposed to know? Like, what am I there? I'm not there. But I can read to you from some people I trust who know a little more. And this is my golden take on this. You know, the Western media is saying it's a coup in Russia. Then Russian media is saying, much of it saying no big deal. And then my hot take is don't trust any of that shit. Don't trust Western media. Don't trust Russian media, Ukrainian media. Don't trust any of them. Get your news elsewhere. So anyway, I wanted to read this is from Going Underground, an excellent TV show and hosted by Afshin Ratanzi. He does a lot of great work. He has on, people like Seymour Hersh all the time. And anyway, even CNN is now reporting that whatever you want to call it that was happening in Russia, some people are calling it a coup. Some people are calling it just a rogue unit, got a little uppity. I don't know. Whatever you want to call it, up to you. But it seems to be over. Whatever it was is over. Belarusian president, in agreement with Vladimir Putin, held talks with the Wagner PMC boss, Prigozhin, and the Wagner Group is this mercenary group. A lot of people say they're one of the strongest, bestest fighting groups in Russia, and they were clearly unhappy with Putin somehow. President Lukashenko, that's the head of Belarus, his press service has reported that Prigozhin accepted a proposal to stop the Wagner advance inside Russia and to take further steps to de-escalate tensions. According to Lukashenko, there is currently a draft to resolve the situation with the PMC, which includes security guarantees for its fighters, immunity for the fighters. And then Prigozhin has said, we are very glad that at the moment we've managed to avoid bloodshed. We should not shoot at each other. We should destroy the armed forces of Ukraine and liberate the native Russian lands. So while the Wagner Group was clearly unhappy with Putin, this guy's still saying we need to quote unquote liberate Ukraine. So it's not like this doesn't strike me as a full on coup. But anyway, again, I will let other people decide that. But do not trust the Western media. They're gonna feed you a bunch of horse shit, and you need to get your information elsewhere. But I think the key thing to note right now is that whatever it was that was going on is now over. And the Wagner unit supposedly has full immunity guarantees. And beyond that, I don't know. The other thing is, unlike a lot of other people that you might get commentary from online that are outside the mainstream media, I'm not willing to just act like I know for certain something that I don't know. So when something's in the middle of happening, I don't just, turn on my phone and go, here's what's really happening. I'm making it up. Like, I don't like to do that because then you end up being wrong a fuck ton. So I prefer to wait and get information from reliable sources outside of our garbage Western media. So that's update. Whatever it was that you want to call it seems to be pretty over. And also Mark Ames, good journalist who also was in Moscow for a long time. He made a good point when he tweeted out that the one thing that could make the West or America miss Putin, meaning wish Putin were still there, is for a rogue Wagner mercenary group to take control of is it the first or second largest nuclear stockpile in the world? Like, that is, as much as the West and the America is, celebrating, yay, shit's screwed up in Russia. Woo-hoo! As much as they're celebrating, they also wouldn't like to see Prigozhin and the Wagner group take over Russia. And it's just a clusterfuck all around. So anyway, seems to be pretty much over. I got a lot of other stories for you today. We're going to cover, oh, by the way, sorry, I'm coming to you an hour late because of some shit going on in my life. But don't worry, nothing bad. It's just some toe fungus. No, it's not actually toe fungus. But anyway, if it were, I would tell you. I'm that honest. But I want to get to you about Biden's completely insane foreign policy, but also like it's not even logical. Like the Biden administration is at cross purposes in their own foreign policy. Like they can't even. This isn't even just them being assholes, which is most of their foreign policy. This is them not knowing what each other is saying on their garbage foreign policy. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm also going to talk about this new law, and we can start with that new law that is so broad, it could easily end up with just the arrest of countless journalists. By the way, for those of you watching on locals at leecamp.net, I will be featuring some of your comments as we go along. So please feel free to comment at leecamp.net if you're watching over there, and I will try and highlight many of those. All right, so let's start off with this new law. Now, this is in Canada, but I will also talk about how it's not just Canada. And also the U.S., usually it's Canada that uses the U.S., like our horrible neoliberal, just draconian shit. Like Canada will look over there and be like, hey, that looks horrible. Let's do some of that. So normally that's the how it works. Those are the steps. America does something awful and Canada's like, yeah, sure, why not? But this seems to be, it can sometimes work in the reverse, where Canada will pass some awful law and the U.S., which is always looking for awful laws. I mean, we are always on the market for just awful draconian shit. So we'll look over and we'll be like, oh, okay, they got something good there. So it could very well, could very well come to the United States very soon. But for those of you, and I know some of you are in Canada, for those of you in Canada, so this is at the Canada Files, which is a good outlet. Innocent until labeled foreign. And this is written by Truth Bomb Media. Canadian lawmakers consider the adoption of a foreign influence transparency registry, which, while it is presented as a measure to enhance transparency, right? And that always, hey, we're going to enhance transparency by locking you up for being connected to a country that you have no connection with. Well, it's presented as a measure to enhance transparency and bolster national security. Instead, it will serve as a tool to suppress dissent, curtail what's left of our freedom of speech, and enable excessive governmental overreach. The broad scope of this law makes it so anyone in Canada could be labeled as foreign influence. Boy, sound familiar? And subjected to invasive investigative measures. Canadians should take into account the experiences of countries where the negative consequences of similar legislation are already being observed. And so listen to how some of this law is written. This sounds very American. I feel like this is like Canada just trying to out America. Here's listen how broad this is. Communications activity. So consideration should be given to whether communications activity would be registrable, which I think is not a word. They just made that up. Communications activity could cover all circumstances in which information or material are disseminated, published, dispersed, shared, or made available to the Canadian public. Okay, folks. So I know I said this could allow for the locking up of journalists and registering you, tarnishing you with that scarlet letter, branding you with the flame of, oh, you're a foreign influence, right? I had to deal with that for years. I mean, hell, some people are still dumb enough to keep acting like I'm some kind of foreign influence. But So I had said journalist, right, when I was initially introduced this, but really it's anyone who puts forward anything. It's anyone who it says shares. If you share something, you're now could be registered as a foreign agent, which then allows them to just throw all of your rights out, right? You're a foreign agent now. Okay, well, we can steal your bank account. We can lock you up. You don't have freedom of speech. You're not a journalist. Like all of those so-called rights wiped away once they nail you as foreign influence. To continue from the law, information and material can be in any form, including, does that include like grimaces? Like, you just squint your eyes in a certain way and they're like, foreign influence. But seriously though, any form, like you post something on Twitter, you post a tweet that says, we're in a proxy war, and now they just go, oh, that's foreign influence. Can be in any form. A communications activity is registrable if the activity is undertaken on behalf of a foreign principal for the purpose of influencing government or public opinion. Okay, so that's the sentence where people go, oh, well, that's not me. I'm not doing it on behalf of another government, right? I don't count under that. Journalists believe that. So many people believe that. But the truth is, it doesn't have to be true. When they say that you are doing it under the influence of another government, that doesn't need to be a real thing. They can just say that, as they've done with many peoples, including Julian Assange, right? WikiLeaks. They claim that was under foreign influence. Oh, that was Russian influence. No, it wasn't. It had nothing to do with Russia, yet they just accuse him of that, and then they can do whatever the fuck they want. They've been torturing him for 10 years. Bernie Sanders was accused of being foreign influence as he was running for president. Donald Trump was accused of being foreign influence as he was running and then president. They can do it to fucking anyone. Chinese academics in the U.S. are being drummed out, are being kicked out of universities, despite how much benefit they give to that university and to the country, meaning the United States. Chinese academics in the U.S. are being kicked out, are being sent back because they're a foreign influence. Hamilton 68, right, was this so-called Russian bot board that accused everyone under the sun of being a Russian bot. But now we know, and it's been heavily reported, that now we know, and I said, many of us said it at the time, but still, better late than never. It's been heavily reported Hamilton 68 was bullshit. Big, flaming bullshit. Just absolute nothingness there. No connection to Russia. They just pointed at anybody that the neoliberal class wanted to stop or hinder or cause problems for, and they said, you are Russian influence according to this bot algorithm we created. How about the Uhuru African Socialist Party in the United States that currently has 4 people indicted for being under foreign influence, for quote unquote weaponized free speech? That's actually what the government said as they were indicting these 4 Americans. They said they're indicting them for weaponized free speech. So you're admitting it's for free speech. These people are indicted for free speech. And they're right now fighting those charges. So they're accused of being foreign influence. So basically anybody can be accused of being foreign influence if our government, if our ruling elite, if our empire wants to stop them. And like I said, the whole foreign influence thing has been thrown at me, Chris Hedges, Jesse Ventura, even Matt Taibbi right now, who's revealed the Twitter files, and now he's called foreign influence. George Galloway in the UK, who I don't know, many of you are probably a fan of his show. And he hasn't, first of all, he hasn't been, RT UK hasn't been around for like 3 or 4 years. And so he hasn't been on RT for at least 3 or 4 years. But even when George Galloway's show was on RT, he created it for AP, Associated Press. That's who he was working with. They then leased it to RT. So he wasn't even an employee of RT when he was on RT. And yet still he's called a foreign influence. And the British law, you know, I said this law is not just Canadian, but there's various forms of it in various countries, various Western countries. The UK has one, and it's so vague that George Galloway told me when I saw him that he right now can't go. He can't do unpaid interviews on other state media. Could be RT, could be CGTN. I mean, if they were legit about it, it would also include BBC, CBC, PBS. All these networks would be technically state networks. But really, they use the law against CGTN, the Chinese network, RT, etc. But he said he can't even go on there unpaid, not getting paid, just as an interview. Hey, can you come talk about something? Sure, I'll come talk about it. Because he doesn't know if that law could be used to arrest him once he goes on those networks. And this is just the most fascist bullshit. And then to get to Australia, where they also have done this. In 2018, Australia implemented the Foreign Influence Transparency Scheme, ostensibly to enhance its defense against potential threats. Right, that's what they always say, with a disproportionate focus on China. However, the enforcement of this law did not target malicious foreign entities as expected and still hasn't. Instead, it's primarily focused on Australian citizens, particularly those who expressed opposing political views. A notable example of this is the case of former Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott and Andrew Cooper, the director of Liberty Works, an organization focused on promoting civil liberties and free speech. And again, it doesn't matter whether you like Tony Abbott or not. That's not the point. The point is that this foreign influence bullshit is being used to stop people even as high as former prime minister. Both individuals found themselves targeted by a scheme merely for their participation. And here is a great quote from Janet Albrechtsen. The evil nature of totalitarianism is not what happens outside the law. This is so fucking important if you want to understand how this shit works and why we should all care about this and get active about it. The evil nature of totalitarianism is not what happens outside the law. It happens when the law, or a veneer of legality, is used, often in the name of national security, to control what good people do, be it sharing ideas or speaking out against tyranny. You see, folks, it's not about breaking the law. It's when the law is changed to make things like free speech or just being a citizen illegal. It's done within the law. And we are seeing that steadily in America. These laws are changing to make things that should be legal, illegal, so that the fascists, the corporate rulers can do whatever the fuck they want. Keep in mind that in Nazi Germany, being Jewish was illegal, right? What they were doing, what the Nazis were doing was legal because they changed the laws. That's how that shit works. So now clearly we're seeing it in Canada. The implementation of this legislation in Canada raises countless concerns, particularly in terms of overstepping privacy rights and the undermining of established surveillance regulations. Like I said, it allows them, once they've pointed at you and said, oh, you're a foreign influence, they can do essentially anything to you. They can seize your bank accounts. Because who's going to stand up for foreign influence people, right? I mean, right now, Matt Taibbi is the victim of a weaponization of the IRS, and you aren't hearing anything about it on your mainstream media. This is an excellent journalist. Used to work for Rolling Stone for years, and he was like their main journalist. Like every time they put him on the cover, they'd sell magazines. And now the IRS is being weaponized against him to try and just fuck up his life, just make it as difficult. I don't know if they're going to arrest him over, whatever they claim to have found, but the IRS first opened a case against him when the Twitter files was released, and they first went to his home to seize documents on the day he was a witness in front of Congress. So he goes to speak in front of Congress, and that's the day the IRS shows up at his house. So, and at the very least, even if the IRS ends up doing nothing more than that, it's just used as a threat. It's just to say, hey, we are the government, and we will fuck with you in every way we want if you reveal truth about us. All right, so I wanted to bring that to you, and, that really involves Canada, Australia, Britain, and I'm sure the U.S. I mean, hell, half the examples I gave, the Uhuru movement, etc., is within the U.S. So, and actually, we're about to talk about more of that type of thing with some updates on Cop City, and actually a kind of good news update about Cop City in Atlanta. But I want to get to, before I do that, I want to get to Biden's just I don't know. It's like his foreign policy has dementia. Biden's foreign policy, the entirety of it has dementia. It's just like it doesn't know what it did yesterday. It doesn't know what it's supposed to do. It doesn't know who you are. So I want to get to that. Before I do, real quick, just please click subscribe. Please click the bell icon when you do that. I'm getting close. I'm closing in on 50,000 followers on Rumble. It's free to do that. Rumble.com/Lee Camp. You can follow there. So I hope you will do that and join me. And of course, if you sign up at LeeCamp.net, you get my new book, the new ebook for free, Dangerous Ideas. So hope you will do that. All right, let's get to, okay. We got a couple of comments over at LeeCamp.net. I'll just highlight those real quick. Nylene says, sorry, I'm late. Biden is not the one running the country. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. It really is the people encircling Biden, whether he's the one who speaks or not. But anyway, so Anthony Blinken goes over, Secretary of State goes over to China. And this is a big deal because of what it says about the U.S.'s waning power. The U.S. tried this fucking new Cold War against China, and they're going to keep trying it in various ways. However, it's not working. It's failing. It's backfiring. It's making the U.S. look weak. And so they need to iron things out. They can't actually cut ties with China. I mean, hell, everybody in America right now, look at the back of your shirt. It says made in China. You are wearing a tag on your body that says made in China. Like, we are so fucking owned. It's not even funny. But not even just owned, just the corporate ties. And that's also why you see corporate leaders who technically kind of own our country, like Elon Musk and Bill Gates just in the past few days, going to China and having high-level meetings to basically say, hey, forget all that, that Cold War shit. We need to sell our products in your country because you have 1 billion people. So don't worry about what Biden and those screwballs do. We're here to iron things out. But even with that, Anthony Blinken goes over there. And this was supposed to be a moment, like I said, for ironing things out, for easing tensions. It's going to be okay. And Blinken meets with President Xi and says, we're to some level, without using these words, we're sorry about the whole Cold War thing, but we're totes cool. It's going to work out. We're cool. And then it ends up essentially backfiring because of Biden's dumb ass mouth. Biden calls the Chinese leader a dictator, not to his face, because Biden wasn't there, but Biden was in front of donors. But he knew it wasn't like a private meeting. He knew there was press there. Calls him a dictator and opens a new rift right as Blinken is on his tension easing trip. But there's another aspect of more than just how dumb this is and how bad it is for these relations. More than that, there's another aspect of this that I'm about to get to that is completely being largely ignored, which is Biden admitted to something that completely undermines everything the U.S. has told you for the past several months. So Blinken's over there. President Joe Biden's remarks calling Chinese leader Xi Jinping a dictator and China a country with real economic difficulties drew fast condemnation from China over on Wednesday, cracking open a new rift just after the two countries agreed to tentative steps to stabilize the relationship. And the other reason that also I should point out that the U.S. has to go running to China and say, hey, we do want to be friends. We do want to be cool, is because there's so many countries that are growing outside of the U.S. dollar, the petrodollar, the reserve currency, the thing that gives America, the American empire, all of our power. The countries are flocking to get outside of it, understandably. And it is very worrisome to the ruling elite in the U.S. And so they have to run over to China and say, hey, we're cool. It's cool. It's okay. But here are the exact remarks. So Biden's in front of these. He's in front of wealthy donors just a couple weeks ago, or a week ago, and he says, quote, "The reason why Xi Jinping got very upset in terms of when I shot that balloon down." So he's still touting the fact that they spent millions of dollars to shoot down a fucking weather balloon. "When I shot that balloon down with 2 boxcars full of spy equipment," which is probably not true, but they just have to keep saying that, "is he didn't know it was there," Biden told the crowd. Quote, "No, I'm serious. That was the great embarrassment for dictators when you didn't know what happened." And he then says, "By the way, I promise you, don't worry about China. Worry about China, but don't worry about China." Dude, he sounds so out of it. Biden said, "I really mean it. China has real economic difficulties." So he's saying, yeah, he said, "Don't worry about China," which is hilarious. But anyway, this is the part of this statement that very few people seem to be highlighting. Is Biden is admitting that Xi Jinping didn't know the balloon was there. That goes against the entire story we were told, that Americans were told, right? We were told this was this evil, dastardly Chinese spy balloon, even though if they were going to spy on us, they would use satellites, and the idea that they need to float a balloon across the U.S. and destroy any kind of diplomacy between the two countries, just destroy the relationship so that they can float a dumb balloon across that chances are we're going to spot, is fucking lunacy. But anyway, let's just repeat what the propaganda was at the time. It was China's evil. They sent this dastardly balloon to spy on us, to spy on Americans, to see what's going on down there. And they floated it across the U.S., right? Down across Montana, down across all the way down to North Carolina, and then out over the ocean. And they did this to spy on us, right? That was the line that was the line Americans were told, and fucking a lot of people believed it. People believe this shit. I know that if you're watching this right now, then you're probably smart enough to not believe this shit, but a lot of people across America go, fucking China, man. They're sending spy balloons to get us. They believed it. But now, here's Biden quietly in front of donors saying, China didn't know the balloon was there, meaning it was blown off course. Even if it had been a spy balloon, that would mean China was not intending to spy on America. That's the opposite of what you told us for months. For months. And here's Biden admitting, even if he's still claiming it's a spy balloon, admitting that China didn't mean to put it there, didn't mean to have it above America, didn't mean to spy on America. That is the opposite of the propaganda we heard for months. And now you have Joe Biden admitting it, that it was bullshit coming from the U.S. government. And then we had to run around shooting down hobby balloons. That's what we did next. Is we shot down 3 other balloons that were like fucking hobby balloons that cost $12. And I didn't even know hobby balloons still existed, but we spent $1 million on 2 Sidewinder missiles to shoot down a $12 balloon. But I just want to reiterate that this goes against everything we were told for months. And I have not seen the mainstream media. Maybe there's some articles out there. I have not seen the mainstream media to this point, up to now, say that this was not an intentional spying by China. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I missed it. Maybe CNN has been running report after report saying, oh, no, China was not intentionally spying on the U.S. But I have not heard that. So I don't know what the fuck. But this is Biden admitting it, and at the same time torpedoing his own foreign policy, calling, and you got to remember that the Chinese, and they're not the only country, they're not the only culture, but it means a lot to them, as it means a lot to pretty much most people, to be respected. And this is the most disrespectful thing Biden could do, to tell people that Xi is a dictator and that that China has a shitty economy, so you don't need to worry about anything they do because their economy is shit. Their economy is actually growing, as ours is not. Now, of course, if you want to get into the deeper level of reality, because I like to do that and a lot of people don't, but we should not want infinite growth. Side note. But if you believe the capitalist view of the world, grow at all costs. So China's economy is actually growing. The U.S. is not growing. And, you know, if you get at a deeper level, we should not want it to keep growing. But anyway. But all right. So I want to bring that story to you. And now let's get to the update on Cop City, which is it's good news and it's pretty impressive. Like, I don't know that I've seen this happen much before. I have a bunch of other stories coming up, by the way. In a few minutes, we're going to go to just rumble.com/Lee Camp. But let's get to this Atlanta Cop City update. Oh, please take a second, by the way, to hit subscribe and hit the bell icon. Whether you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, even if you've already subscribed, make sure you click the bell icon, because that's the only way you'll get alerted to any of my videos. I do these live streams Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern. We started an hour late today, but normally an hour late. Somebody's asking if I talked about the big news in Russia. Yes, I did. That was at the beginning of the show. But I wanted to let you know of a time change. This show will be, as things are changing with this show, I told you we'd get a new background. We'd have some changes going on. Another one will be the days of the week that I will be live streaming. I'm going to switch to Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So we'll skip Wednesday because, everybody needs a break. But this does a few things. One is it means they'll all be on weekdays, but it also means that several of those days, Tuesday and Thursday, will be the days that I know many of you are also Jimmy Dore fans, will be the days that Jimmy Dore, I think, does not have his live stream. So you can use mine to complement his, and you can watch me on the Tuesday, Thursday days. But either way, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday will be the change. This coming week, I'm going to stick to the old schedule so I can keep telling everybody about the change. But that change will be coming up. A lot of exciting things happening. And but the times will remain the same, 3 p.m. Eastern. Okay, so let's keep moving. And of course, this is also a podcast. So if you're more of a podcast person where it's just easier, you're in a car or something, you want to hit play and it's easier for that, you can do that too. Unfortunately, on Spotify, it's called The Lee Camp Show because they banned my podcast. So now I have a new name on there. But otherwise, most everywhere else, it's called Moment of Clarity. And my other two podcasts are Government Secrets and Common Censored. 3 podcasts. You can check out all of them. Okay, so the prosecutor, so to give you a little background, actually, Katie's asking what days will they be? It'll be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So just skipping Wednesday. It'll be all the weekdays except Wednesday. All right. So to give you a little background about Cop City real quick, because I know most of you already know it. Down in Atlanta, they have decided to build a multi-million-dollar cop training, police brutality training city. Not police brutality stopping, police brutality facilitating facility. A facilitating facility for police brutality to train cops how to be bigger assholes, horrible human beings, and be the fist of the fascist state. So that's what they are building down there. And in order to build it, they didn't build it in some, broken down area of buildings that was dilapidated. They are knocking down 100 acres of pristine forest down in Atlanta. So protesters go, they've been protesting, they've been tree sitting, they've been doing all those things to try and stop this from happening for multiple reasons. One is you're spending money on cops rather than the people of Atlanta. 2 is we don't need to train them to be more brutal. They fucking get enough training in that. And 3 is they don't want to see this forest knocked down. So that's been going on. And the police have gone in, they've arrested a lot of people, and they've murdered one person. You probably remember that story, all right? They shot, I believe, 50 times or more than 50 times and killed an unarmed protester who, according to the autopsy, was sitting Indian style. Oh, wait, that's not the term anymore. Sorry. I don't know if that's offensive or not, but my bad. Sitting cross-legged and hands up. And so they shot him 50 times. They kill this guy unarmed, and it turns out that the only one who fired a shot was police. It was police firing at police, and it's horrific. It's an assassination of an environmental activist who was not harming anyone. But on top of that, they continue to arrest protesters and charging them with domestic terrorism. So here's the good news. Sorry, that is all horrible news. Here's the good news. The prosecutor who is in charge of prosecuting those innocent, in my view, unarmed protesters doing the right thing, prosecuting them for domestic terrorism, for sitting somewhere and blocking the knocking down of a forest. That prosecutor has quit the Cop City cases over disagreements with the Georgia Attorney General. Yeah, the disagreement being, go fuck yourself, Georgia Attorney General. A Metro Atlanta prosecutor announced Friday that her office is withdrawing from criminal cases tied to protests over plans to build a police and firefighter training center, citing disagreements with the state's Republican Attorney General. Now, because this is AP and because the AP pushes the neoliberal world, they have to make a big thing about it. It's a Democrat versus a Republican, right? And make you believe those are the two sides of reality, right? This Democrat, well, Republican. But in fact, it's someone who had some sort of moral core, tiny little bit. I don't deny this person has probably prosecuted horrible shit. So meaning horrible prosecutions. So I'm not defending her as just a wonderful person, but some little level of moral core inside of them told them not to take an unarmed, innocent environmental activist and prosecute them for domestic terrorism. Some little itty bitty seed of tiny bitty, like a mouse poop size of moral core within her, told her to stand up against this. And it doesn't have anything to do with whether she's a Democrat, whether the Attorney General is a Republican, doesn't matter. But they want you to believe that this all breaks down on party lines. Democrats good, Republicans bad. I see no other reality other than Democrats good, Republicans bad. There is nothing else going on in world. Okay. Thank you, Zach, by the way. Thank you for the donation. Okay, so the Cobb County District Attorney Sherry Boston's decision means Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr will have sole oversight. We'll have sole oversight over. Hold on. Sorry about that. We'll have sole oversight regarding more than 40 additional cases connected to the Stop Cop City movement. Previously, the two officers held joint jurisdictions over those cases. Boston, a Democrat, said in a news release, over the past 7 months, more than 40 people have been charged with domestic terrorism. Do you understand? When you charge fucking innocent people, unarmed people trying to stop brutal police with domestic terrorism, not only is it fucking fascist, but it's also just completely destroys the word terrorism. What does terrorism even mean anymore? Huh? Explain that to me. What does terrorism mean if you're charging someone sitting in a tree with being a terrorist? You have ruined words. That's really the only thing I'm mad about here. Why ruin words? Why do you have to ruin a fucking word? It was a good word. I like the word terrorist. It meant something. It had meaning. Now it means what? Even for the ones that weren't sitting there quietly and actually threw a rock, a stone, in the direction of a police officer. Gasp. They threw a stone, and now they're a domestic terrorist. You have ruined words, you assholes. It means nothing. The 40 people have been charged with domestic terrorism in connection, and this is again the AP being a neoliberal propaganda rag, in connection with violent protests. Yeah, but define violence, define the connection with. That means a lot of them were just standing next to someone who threw a rock. Fireworks and rocks have been thrown at officers. Oh my goodness. Jeez Louise. And they say, oh, construction equipment has been hit with fireworks. Oh, gosh. Well, that is certainly domestic terrorism. You assholes. The Georgia statute, which had been rarely employed prior to December, carries a sentence of between 5 and 35 years behind bars. Protesters argue that the charges are overblown. Yeah, you think? That's a nice diplomatic term for what's going on here. None of those arrested have been accused of injuring anyone. Did you catch that? They're domestic terrorists. None of them have been accused of injuring anyone. Boston, that's the name of the prosecutor who is stepping down. And anybody out there with a name that's also a city, can you not do that? Because it confuses things, and we don't need that. So just could you change your last name immediately? Okay. Boston said she had concerns with the prosecution of Thomas Jurgens, a Southern Poverty Law Center staff attorney. They are prosecuting a legal observer. And for those of you, some of you have been to protests, some of you haven't. For those of you who've been to these protests, you probably have noticed that there's something called legal observers there at many of them. They usually wear highly colored hats, sometimes like neon orange, neon green, to show that they are not taking part in the protest. They are legal observers. They watch what the cops do. They watch what people do. And they can then say, hey, I'm a lawyer and I'm defending the rights of those who are being beaten by police or arrested. And most of the time, in most areas, cops leave them alone because it's fucked up to arrest a legal observer. It's also fucked up to arrest press. But as we said in this earlier story, they're doing more of that now too. And by the way, at the Cop City, they've also arrested press as well. So this is a person, Thomas Jurgens, who was a legal observer at one of them. 23 people charged with domestic terrorism March 5th after more than 150 masked protesters stormed a construction site, torching equipment while throwing projectiles at fleeing officers. Yet you'll notice that even as they try and make it sound so scary, no one's been injured. No one's been injured by the protesters. However, the cops have assassinated someone and beaten people. Jurgens was wearing a bright green hat, a well-known identifier of legal observers, and his arrest alarmed many human rights organizations. So at least this is good news. This prosecutor stepping down, refusing to prosecute. And that's what you need in these situations, is you need people to start to realize, as we all believe that Nazi guards should have done, even if they were lower level Nazi soldiers, even at the lowest level, we all believe, I hope you do, that despite the repercussions, despite the fact that some of their family might not have understood, they should have said, you know what, this is wrong. We're not going to do this. That's what we need in so many of these instances in the United States, apparently also in Canada, Australia, Britain. You need people to stand up and say, hey, this is wrong. I'm not going to be a part of this. I don't want to prosecute a lawyer for observing what is being done by the police. And so this is good news that this person has stood up and is not being part of it. Let's see. Going over to leecamp.net real quick for some comments. Let Justice Roll says, thank you for mentioning that infinite growth is neither good nor possible. No problem. I think that's why a lot of you, I hope that's why a lot of you tune into my stuff, is because I try and get to the deeper levels, which very few, even some talking heads, which I know is kind of a derogatory term for what we do, but it's apt. It's a derogatory and apt term. many of the talking heads that, I have plenty of respect for, but they're not going to go to that lower level. They're going to talk about, the economy in the US is hurting, people are hurting, but they won't talk about, hey, maybe we could also evolve to a world where you don't need infinite growth in a form of cancer that will ultimately destroy the world. Like even just that sentence there. There's a lot of places you won't get that. You won't ever hear it. Okay, let's keep going. But the rest of this live stream, which I have multiple stories coming up, a bad update on the Mountain Valley Pipeline and the EPA, a update on that. What else am I gonna? Let's see if I'll try and get to. Oh yes, how the U.S. destroys other countries with debt. I have more detail on that than I have given in a while. So I think that could be really important. But all right, so that's all going to take place at rumble.com/Lee Camp. That's rumble.com/Lee Camp or my locals page, leecamp.net. Those are the two places this will continue. And if you aren't yet a member, please become a member at leecamp.net. You get so many perks. You get to watch the live streams anytime because about 24 hours after these live streams go up, they disappear. So, but if you're at leecamp.net, watch them whenever you want. You also immediately get my new ebook, Dangerous Ideas. By the way, if any of you are members and you haven't received it for some reason, email me, leecampmail@gmail.com. Also, I wanted to tell everybody, I am going to begin, I do it a lot, but I'm going to begin highlighting activism around the country more and more as much as I can. So if you are involved in any kind of activism, any kind of protest across this country or wherever, I want to highlight your stuff if it fits into the areas I talk about. So email me, leecampmail@gmail.com if that is your thing. So that's leecamp, MAIL @gmail.com. No, not MALE. I wasn't like trying to make an email address based on my gender. That's really fucked up that you would think that about me. And I'm just like really offended. Okay. But all right, the rest of this is at rumble.com/Lee Camp. Join me over there. Rumble.com/Lee Camp or leecamp.net. Please hum in your head for another couple of seconds while I cut off the other streams.